In your study of Wyoming state and local politics, let's take a look at Wyoming's political culture. Political culture is defined as the attitudes, beliefs, values, and perception of the underpinnings and the operation of a political system. In other words, how much government does a population want? How much does it need? How much is it willing to pay for? Can it be considered to be conservative, liberal? Let's look at some of those questions. Wyoming is the equality state. Over the years, had a number of students that, that's the one thing that they remember from their K-12 education. Wyoming is known as the equality state because we gave women the right to vote first as a territory. Landmarks are Esther Hobart Morris, who was the first Justice of the Peace in the United States. Back in 1871, Wyoming was a territory. It didn't become a state until 1890. Nellie Taylor Ross, who was a strong prohibitionist, strong wanting to get the 18th Amendment passed in order to get rid of alcohol, became governor in 1925, the first governor in any of the United States, and the only woman governor in Wyoming's history. Looking at the Great Seal of Wyoming, and I know this isn't in very good focus, but just taking a look at it, that the theme around it on each side of the symbol of equal rights with the woman are banners that read oil, mines, livestock, and grains. If you want to look at the political culture and what drives the economy in Wyoming, the perception is that that's oil, mines, livestock and agriculture, and grains. Interesting that, grains, you would probably look at barley on the east side of the state, maybe some winter wheat. Um, Certainly, we're not an exporter of grain out of Wyoming, but again, that's the perception. Wyoming was a state government created during the progressive era of the 1890s, the populist era, that most of the states that came about during this time, their constitutions show a distrust in government. They wanted to lay everything out, dot all the I's, cross all the T's, and make sure that there was no means by which to have a false interpretation of what the government wanted. Values that are held in Wyoming, and again on the first slide when I had as political culture Wyoming as a question mark, there would be those that would argue, but I would make the case that many Wyomingites consider themselves to be individualism, and pick yourself up by your own bootstraps. Don't whine about things that are happening around you. Seems to be a value of Wyoming, people who live in Wyoming. Conservatism, yes, we are a red state as opposed to a liberal blue state. And evidence for the conservatism, if you look at the Republican Party as being the party of small government, low taxes, uh, social issues being conservative, then you have to look at Wyoming as being a conservative red state. 82% of the state legislators are Republican. 79% of the partisan seats statewide, the executive branch, the county commissioners, all the county elected officials, 79% of them are Republican. We go to the polls in this state and vote Republican. We have a trust of the federal government. We have a distrust of big business. We have a distrust of big organizations. Your reading, Pushed Off the Mountain, Sold Down the River by Sam Western. The reason I have you read it is not to convince you of Western's point, although he does make some good points, but he makes the thesis that we have a cowboy mystique in the state of Wyoming. And that sort of holds us back, that this cowboy mystique of individualism and such, in the face of the facts of how dependent we are on the federal government, maybe it's a mystique. Demographics in the state of Wyoming, small population. We're the least populated state in the union in this big square state. We have less than 5 persons per square mile in this state. In actuality, by the government standards, we're not rural. We're known as frontier. We're even if you want to look at it as on the scale lower than rural states like you might have in the Midwest, we're actually still considered frontier. Do when you look at demographics, most of the state is white Caucasian. We have more minorities coming in, more minorities decide to live here, but you still have, looking at the state as being very white. We have an aging population. Reason being is that more people are getting older, but the young people in this state are leaving. And so therefore, about every 10 years, the average age of people in Wyoming is going up about 3 years. That's going to be a problem in the future. The economy of the state is based on minerals and agriculture, boom and bust, because minerals and agriculture, the producers of minerals, the producers of agricultural products in the state cannot control the prices. We are at the mercy of Washington, D.C. energy policies on oil and natural gas and coal, and the demand for those commodities, those mineral resources. Tourism and freeways are a godsend in this state. Tourism with Yellowstone National Park and Devil's Tower, other places for fishing and hunting. We actively promote tourism. And the freeways, most of those trucks, I-80 and I-25, particularly I-80 and I-90 in the north, those trucks are going from point A to point B across Wyoming and they don't stop. But on their way, they're paying fuel taxes, they're buying food, they're buying goods, and we, the state needs to continue to promote the freeways and keep them in good shape. Union Pacific Railroad and building across the southern tier of Wyoming. If you ever look at a map, you can see just how much the UP Railroad still owns. Those of you who are close to the UP Railroad, Rock Springs, Green River, Evanston, Rawlins, all the way across the southern tier know how important the UP Railroad is to your local economies. Airlines are always still a problem in Wyoming. They want to bring people in. They want to take people out to international hubs. The problem, of course, is always the number of people that are willing to use the airlines. It's very difficult to get good airline service in this state, and that's an effect on our economy. But we do look at the quality of life, laid back attitude. You can't see a huge gap between the rich and the poor in this state. Poverty, even though it does exist, it has a much lower level than those areas of the country that are urban in nature. There's basically an equal income distribution across the state of Wyoming. The exception, of course, is Teton County. Jackson Hole, Teton County, has the most number of millionaires per capita than any other place in the Union. So, it's often said that you have Wyoming and then you have Teton County. It's a whole different ballgame. Massification in the state affects the political culture only because we really only have one state newspaper, the Casper Star Tribune, even though the news might be 24 hours old, is the only newspaper that covers statewide news. It's gotten better in the years, last couple of decades, with the internet, with wireless communication, cell phones, and satellite TV, that we're getting better information for our politics. But going back and just making the case again for political culture, the beliefs and attitudes, and perceptions, conservatism, most Wyomingites can look at it as being status quo. We're slow to change, slower than slow to change. Believe in a balanced budget. There are even barriers in the state constitution that do not allow the legislature to invest public funds except for unemployment insurance and so forth. But we're always looking at a rainy day fund for the future because we're a boom and bust state. We believe in low taxes. Sales taxes are very low. There's no state income tax. Social issues, looking at as being conservative, gay marriage. Wyoming continues to join those states that feel that it should be part of the state constitution that marriage is between a man and a woman. Abortion, um, it's been an argument that I've watched for the last 30 years that Wyoming accepts abortion in the case of rape or incest when the mother's health is in danger, but believes in restrictions on abortion. Social issues, conservative social issues, are strongest in the southwest corner of the state with the influence of the LDS Church, Mormons. Those of you that have traveled throughout the state, you can see a real difference between the southwest corner of the state and the influence of the LDS Church and the other parts of the state. It's just the way things are. We have a distrust of Washington, D.C. An example of that would be the drinking age controversy back in 1988 when Washington, D.C. forced Wyoming to lower its drinking age to 18 and threatened to take away its highway funds. We were the last state in the union to raise the drinking age from 18 to 21. Gun control, still don't trust the feds. Is a state that believes heavily in the Second Amendment and particularly to keep firearms for hunting. Death penalty, we don't use it very often, just like a lot of other states that we believe in the death penalty, we just don't use it very often, but we don't want Washington, D.C. telling us what to do. Regards the death penalty. Wolves is another example. The introduction of wolves here about 10 years ago in Yellowstone Park, of anybody that understood they were going to get outside the park, what to do with them when they got into livestock. We don't like the federal government telling us what to do with livestock and agriculture and the problems with wolves. I like to look at it that in Wyoming, I think we're more libertarian conservatives. We believe in strong economic conservatism. We believe that we shouldn't increase the debt. We should keep taxes low. We believe in trickle down economics. But we also believe in freedom of choice, that we don't like the federal government or any government telling us what to do. And we believe in free speech and a free press. So that is my take on political culture in Wyoming. There would be those that would argue with me, but there's a lot of evidence that this state is a very conservative state.